Welcome back to the Full Force Fathers podcast, episode 82. Dave, what is going on today?
Oh, man. Everything's good. We just got back from a great trip to Texas. Me and the entire family, which we'll get into later. Things are good. I see you're you're sitting right now, but I see you're moving, so that's good. You survived the race in Prescott. We can't wait to hear about it. How's everything with you today?
Everything is good. The weather is just, this is why we live here. We talk about it all the time. And the fact that we've been getting 58, 60, 62 degrees at night. I mean, and obviously for me, the cheap ass that I am, the fact that I have not had to run my air conditioner 24/7 for the last week has been tremendous. And I'm super pumped about today's episode because if you listened last week, you knew the race recap was coming out this week, just due to travel time and stuff. And yes, I am still in one piece, beat up and battered, but I'm still here, still kicking, still juiced up about the race. So hell yeah, man, let's rock and roll with episode 82.
Great. All right, so the numbers are going to be pretty simple today. The greatest number 82s of all time. And I only had one on the list until we were talking pre-show, and then my mind got reminded. I don't know how it happened. I was kind of talking about how the number 82 wasn't very great in our list. And all of a sudden, one of my favorite players of all time popped in. So I'll get to him second. But first, Ozzie Newsome, who's a tight end, played in 198 consecutive games. He had a streak of 150 games with a catch. He was a two-time All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowler, solid tight end, Ozzie Newsome.
Yes, good. Yep, no doubt about it. Once again, 82 was tough.
It is tough. And there's another tight end there that I like I said, I cannot believe that I forgot about. One of my favorite players of all time, consummate professional, just goes out there and got it done. Jason Witten, 17 seasons he played, the majority of which were for the Cowboys. He also played a short stint with the Raiders. He had over 1,200 catches for over 13,000 yards and had 74 touchdowns in his career. He was Romo's go-to guy. He ended up becoming Prescott's go-to guy. He was never afraid to go up over the middle, take a catch, and take a hit. My favorite memory of Witten was in a Philly game. When he caught it over the middle, he got hit, popped, his helmet came off, and he just looked around. He was still standing. He went running down the field. No helmet, straight down the field. And got tackled, came up with blood running down the side of his face. I'm like, that's my guy right there. He could block, he could catch, he could do it all.
Yeah, no, he for sure, the consummate professional. One thing about Jason Witten that I love, and obviously, I love tight end position because once again, I have no football background other than a fan, playing flag football for fun. You know what I mean? The fact that he was never the fastest guy, he was never the strongest guy, but he just was. He reminded you of Tim Duncan, maybe not as legendary Hall of Fame stats, but just Mr. Fundamental, dude. He blocked well, he caught well, he ran routes well, he had high football IQ. Just an overall, for years, a top 5 or 6 tight end in the NFL. Definitely, he was an easy guy to root for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was. He was an 11-time Pro Bowler. He was the 2012 Walter Payton Man of the Year. So, you talk about just being a good guy. Man, he was it. He was it. And, over 12,000 receiving yards. Just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm glad I remembered him before this episode because I would have been real irritated with myself afterwards.
First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And anyways, that the numbers, like we said, numbers 82 is tough, especially coming off last week's 81, which is just this. We had Jerry Rice 80, Calvin Johnson, and freaking T.O. last week, and they're like, 82, man, 82 kind of stuff. But I don't want to just leave this limited to football because I'm going to throw a little NASCAR at you.
Oh, I don't want to hear it. I looked at NASCAR, and there was nobody there that won anything with the 82 car.
It doesn't matter. The great Joe Eubanks drove the 82 car in NASCAR for 138 out of his 159 career races from 51 to 61, baby. Almost 100 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, he ran with it a long time, had no real quality wins with it. I mean, there's another guy. I think his name was Scott Speed. He drove the 82 for a little while too. What a great name for a NASCAR driver. Speed.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, great. So, anyways, that's 82. We got a Bible verse for you, and today it has to do with endurance. I've used this one on the show before, and I'm reusing it today. There's a couple different ways you can read it. If you're reading out of the New International Version, like I'm going to, you can really replace it by using the word endurance. But so it comes from Romans 5, 3:4, and I actually have my physical Bible in front of me to read it word for word out of the book. Romans 5:3-4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. Right? And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Now, if you read it from a different version, you replace perseverance with endurance. And it has here, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And it's a good Bible verse to segue into race recap, because to run 50 miles, you have to have some endurance, right? But throughout the 50-mile race, there's going to be some suffering. So there's the second big word in that Romans verse, right? And then the third big word is hope. And when you're in the middle of the shit, 35 miles in, you got to have some hope. So you're suffering for the endurance, right? And then you have to have some hope, and then endurance produces the hope of the finishing, whether it's a time or just finishing. And then also, if you bring it all the way back to the beginning, when I signed up for this race, there was a lot of suffering in the training, right? How many times we talk about getting up at 2:00 in the morning to go run in the desert for 5 hours straight when there's nobody around. It's just you and your thoughts and your headlamp, and you're running through the fucking desert at 3 a.m, knowing that suffering of losing sleep and beating up your body, bringing it back full circle, brings the result, which I was, I gifted to myself on Saturday afternoon, evening.
Yeah, you sure did. You gave yourself the suck. There's no doubt about that. And I thought it'd be great to start asking you some questions, and you could fill everybody in on basically what happened that day. How's that sound?
Yeah, that works. I've been looking forward to doing the race recap, because I've talked to so many people on the phone, right? You and I talked for 40 minutes after race. My dad and I talked for 2 hours. I talked to Cart for a little bit. I talked to Chris for a bit. I talked to all these guys about the race. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to do a race recap episode. We can all everyone can tune and listen to it, because there's probably things I told you that I didn't tell my dad, and things I didn't tell my dad that I didn't tell so-and-so, But shout out to the Saddles 100. If you listen to our pre-race show, the Saddles 100 was the race in Prescott, Arizona. I have my bib here. One of the cooler bibs I've ever had. 108. I sent that to you at 4 a.m. on race day.
Yeah. And I was up. How great is that? I was up to wish you well.
Yep. And then my Saddles 100 hat. And then they gave the Saddles 100 cutoff, which I like right here. It says running cult member, which I am a cult runner for sure. But yeah, so shout out to Prescott. He was, pre-race, he was like, hey, if only 30 people signed up for this race, I was going to do it. And the race director is an elite ultra runner, very well known nationwide. His won races, big races. He's won Cocodona 250 and stuff. So he's a very well known person in the ultra community. Hell of a job. My hat's off to him, dude. We ended up having 110 people sign up for it, which was tremendous. But I'll stop talking. You want to ask some questions, and I'll go through it as you ask.
Yeah. So I think, listen, you had set a goal of yourself for 12 hours to knock this out in 12 hours. What did you finish at?
11 hours, 53 minutes, and 50 seconds.
Yes, sir, you did. How great is that? How did that feel to know the goal you set for yourself of 12 hours? And you said it yourself afterwards that it was an ambitious goal.
Yeah, very.
That you had set. You didn't lead on to that beforehand, but afterwards you told me you thought that was an ambitious goal, but you hit it. So how did that feel when you crossed that line and you hit that number?
I mean, it felt good. It felt great. I don't even know. Physically, I felt like someone had just put my legs through the meat grinder. But, I mean, it was so good, because, as always, when you go into anything, that's very difficult, very challenging in a race, especially in the running world. You always want to finish, right? Goal. The overarching goal is always to finish in one piece. Like, in this sense, it was 17 hours was your cutoff. You had to run 17 hours. And then, like I told you, I kind of felt 14 was a good number, and then I said 12 would just be. It was a great day, and to actually know, and my watch died, and I'm so sad that my watch died because I really wanted to cover the entire statistics, and it's my fault. I charged my watch the day before, so I don't think it was, maybe just that little bit of juice that it missed the day before and that night might have been the difference. So my watch died at 40.58 miles on my watch. And I was like, son of a gun, dude. So at that point, I knew I was, obviously the psycho that I am, it was playing in the back of my mind the whole day. Like, okay, I got to this checkpoint at this time. I got to this checkpoint at this time. I got to this checkpoint, I'm like, I'm good. And then my watch died. And I'm like, I have no idea. Like, because the worst part of the course was miles 43 to 50. You literally, if anyone knows Prescott, Arizona, if you don't, look up Watson Lake and Willow Lake in the granite, they call them granite dells that surround the lake. And they literally are ginormous granite boulders that are round. And you were, for literally 6 of those 7 miles, we were up and over, around, climbing up them, climbing back down them. And at that point, I was like, my watch is dead. I don't even know what time it is. I don't feel like looking at my phone because you had to carry your phone on you for GPS if you got lost. So I'm not looking at my phone. I don't care what time it is. So the guy that I was running with, shout out to Nathan Butler. He ran the first 50 miles with me. He's a complete different level savage. He ran the 100 miles. So he ran the first 50 with me, and then when I got to the 50 and finished, he still had to go do another 50. And side note, he carried an American flag the entire time. The entire race, he ran.
Not like carried it like just the flag. He carried it on a pole.
He carried it on a flagpole the entire race.
Amazing.
That's his third 100-mile race this year that he carried the American flag. And he does it for suicide awareness for veterans. His Marine Corps captain, I think he said. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It took his own life, and he was also his wrestling coach. So he does it for awareness for suicide awareness and veteran suicide awareness. But so back to the story, with about, I don't know, 2 miles to go, maybe a mile and a half, which I didn't know. I was now going off of his watch and hoping his watch, and our watches the entire day were not the same. My watch was significantly about half a mile to 1 mile behind his. So I was banking on his watch being more accurate than mine was. And at one point he goes, hey, we're at 11 and a half hours. I think you're going to break 12. And I was like, what? Because at that point, my watch had been dead for a couple hours now, And I'm like, you think we're going to break 12? And he goes, yeah, I think we got it. And then we ran into another just rigorous, miserable section of dells. And I said, you know what? I literally looked at him. I said, Nathan, I don't give a fuck if I hit 12. I hate these rocks so much. I just want to get through these last couple miles in one piece. Because at that point, everything was hurting. Quads, hamstrings, calves, toe, my blister on my toe. I won't show anybody, but yeah, blister on my toe. Just brutal. And then finally, his watch hit 50 miles and we weren't at the finish line. All of a sudden we saw a collection of people. And I literally was like, how much further? That's what I said to the guy that was standing there ringing his bell, cheering us on. He's like, maybe a 1/10 of a mile. And at that moment was the first concrete moment where I knew I was like, all right, I'm breaking 12 hours. I have a 1/10 of a mile. I could baby crawl a 1/10 of a mile and get there in time. And so as we finally came out of the dells and we were on this single track, Andine was there with the girls for like the last 100 yards, and the girls hopped on the course and ran with me, and I crossed the finish line in 11:53:50. And it was just such a huge, I would have been happy with 12:05. I would have been happy with 12:27. I would have been happy with 13:06. But the fact that it was under 12 was tremendous. And I think running with Nathan helped me because this obviously he's a seasoned ultra runner. And, he was, giving me pointers and stuff throughout the race. And even he said to me, he goes, Brett, I've never run 50 miles in under 12 hours. He goes, that's a hell of an accomplishment for your first 50 to break 12. And this guy runs hundreds. He goes, I've never run sub 12 on 50. So it felt really good. It felt really, really, really good.
That's great. Congratulations on that. What would you say was the hardest part? You were out there for just under 12 hours. What struggles did you have? What did you have any moments where you're like, this is just what am I doing to myself? Or
Yeah, there was three three points, three parts that I think were all equally as hard. Because when you start, you're jazzed up, right? Like you're like, oh, dude, this is going to be awesome. Like the race gun goes off, and you're running through the downtown Prescott, and it's dark. It's 5 a.m. You're like, this is cool, man. You're just chit chatting away with people. It's not like a 5K. You don't just gun goes off and you start sprinting. Like you got a long day ahead of you. So you're just sitting there bullshitting with a bunch of people as you're jogging 10-minute miles. And in theory, 10-minute miles sounds extremely slow, but it's really extremely fast in an ultra race. And so the three equal parts I'd say that were hard, mentally, actually, I'd break it down. Mentally, the hardest part for me was mile about 12, 11. That's where the steepest climb of the entire course was. And you literally, you had to walk. You had, you weren't run unless you were one of the guys that won the race or gals that finished really, really high up in crazy time. You power hiked most of the big hills, and this was the steepest hill, and it was one of those fuck, this is never ending hills, and you're looking at your watch and you're clicking off good miles. You get through aid station 10 and I'm way ahead of schedule, and then all of a sudden you hit 11 and it's like running into a brick wall. So there was about a 3-mile climb there where you climb like 2,500 feet, similar to Romero Pools, like it's just steep and up and rocky, and that part physically sucked. But once you crested 7,500, you got to the top of that mountain. I forgot the name of the mountain. You literally coasted down like an access road, like a gravel access road down, and you very, very easily were able to pick up time. Eat some of the time that you had lost climbing. The second, that was probably mentally, because at that point you're like, oh my god, it's this hard, and I still have 40 miles to go. This sucks. You know what I mean? What did I do?
yeah.
Physically, the hardest, most painful part of the race was about mile 34 ish when that blister popped on my foot. Because about mile 20, I noticed, where my big toe and my right index toe were rubbing together. Hindsight's 2020. My next ultra, I'll just put some tape around them to separate them a little better. Mile 20, I was like, all right, here comes a blister. And I had picked that up one time on one of my 20-mile training runs. In my plan, I noticed a little blister rub, but I was done at 20, so I didn't even think about it. It never really developed into anything. So 20 miles in, I felt this blister, and then I just dealt with it for a few hours. In mile 34, as we were coming at mile 37 had the last like mega aid station where there was like tons of food and drinks and stuff. And at about mile 34, I remember clear as day the exact step coming out of the tunnel where it popped. And I shit you not, dude, it felt like someone took a knife, an ice pick, and just shoved it right through the top of my foot. And I went from just like a nice steady jog to an instant gimp. And Nathan's like, dude, you all right? I'm like, yeah, that blister just went. You know that one I was talking to you about 2 hours ago? Yeah, it just went. And I was like, shit, I still have 3 miles to the aid station. And I was just about out of water and electrolytes because that was the longest stretch. It was an 11-mile stretch with no aid. And that's when I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this pain is so bad. And Nathan, once again, was like, hey, deal with it, man. Give it a 1,500 yards, a couple thousand yards. You're just going to get so used to the pain, it's going to go away. He goes, at the next aid station, we can take your shoe off and we can get it taped up by the medical staff if you want. I'm like, no, I'm not fucking doing that, dude. If I sit down, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So that's the most physical pain I was in, like actual physical pain. And then the most miserable part of the course, as I aforementioned, 43 to 50 was just awful. It was all those dells, up and down, turning your feet in all different directions, sidestepping down these steep freaking embankments. And all the while, you're looking at some of the most beautiful landscape with the lakes right there. And you're like, who would thought something so beautiful could be so fucking miserable? And I as soon as I crossed the finish line, I told Andy, I said, don't ever ask to go hiking at the dells. I will never go yes. I don't care. I said, if I was completely healthy and on mile 1, I said, I will never go around those dells ever voluntarily ever again. I said.
That's fantastic. I love your wife too, by the way. She helped me throughout the day. I was working in Texas, and we just had a constant thing back and forth. So I'd be like, "Hey, have you heard anything?" And she'd be like, "Oh, no, not yet. I'm meeting him at mile mark or whatever." And then she'd be like, "Hey, just saw him." And I'm like, "All right, how's he feeling?" And she'd be like, "He's feeling great." And I'm like, "Okay, how long to the next aid station?" And then she'd tell me. So we had a good little thing going there. So I appreciate her dealing with me. I mentioned it in the preview episode. I was going to be a pain in the ass. But one of the things that was funny to me, it was towards the end of the day. I forget what aid station it was, but I was like, "Hey, how's he feeling?" And she's like, "Says he feels great. He's ready to go. Can keep going." She goes, "Myself, I could use a nap right about now."
Yeah.
But I go,
Yeah.
"You should tell him that at the next aid station."
Yeah. Yeah. See, the aid stations were fun. Andine's a saint, by the way. And the fact that every time I got to see the girls, that made it all the better. So, of all the aid stations, I was able to see them 3 times. So, the first aid station was mile 10. That was too early in the day to see them. So aid station 10 topped off my water and kept on moving. Aid station mile 18 was the first time that I saw them, or 18 point something, 18 and a half or something like that. I saw them at 18. Andine changed his shirt because my shirt was drenched and disgusting. I was able to change my shirt. She was able to refill my electrolyte, like a pit crew almost, right? You come into the aid station and Andine's right there. What do you need? What do you need? And by the way, all the volunteers at the Saddles 100, fucking phenomenal. Right there, 100% there to help you the whole time, get you whatever you needed, sponge you off with ice on the back of your neck, or make you food, or fill up your water bottles for you so you didn't have to. Just phenomenal. So yeah, so I saw her at aid station 18 for a few minutes, and I did my best to I didn't sit down not at any single aid station. But I made sure at every aid station I touched my toes. I did a little stretch, 2 minutes, bada bing, bada boom, out of there. And then I saw her again, which would end up being the fastest part of the course, was mile 18. The next one was 26.75, that 7.5 or 8 mile stretch. That was the fastest part of the course, flat to downhill the entire time. I saw them there. Once again, she's awesome. She made me a peanut butter and honey sandwich, took a picture of me and the girls to send to my dad, and hung out with them, ate some watermelon. And then the tough stretch for me was the longest part of the course. Mile 37, there was no crew allowed. So I had to wait from mile 26.75 to mile 45 before I saw them again. So I had to go 20.
Basically a marathon, almost a marathon.
In the mountains. And I had to wait for them to see them again. That was a long stretch because you left aid station 26. You knew you had to be full on water and stuff because there was no aid whatsoever until 37. And didn't see them at 37. And then I saw them at 45. And at 45, she had my truck there, and she had the tailgate down. I was able to stretch my legs. She was able to talk to me, and she massaged my quads and my hamstrings a little bit for me real fast. Had a can of, believe it or not, I had a can of Coke because it was just, there's never been a more refreshing drink in your life than when you're 45 miles into an ultra and someone hands you the most perfectly freezing cold can of ice cold Coca-Cola. It was just unbelievable.
Clearly, you were hallucinating at that point.
Yeah, and then after 45, the sad thing was Madison was planning on running those last 4 or 5 miles with me, but once we knew what the course was with all those dells, I told her, I said, Madison, I love you, baby, and you are not going to have any fun if you have to run around these dells with me. You're gonna be fucking miserable. It's not gonna be fun for you.
Yeah.
So she opted not to. But yes, Betty Andine, shout out to my wife, the crew leader for sure. She was just phenomenal, on point. As you know, my wife, she's cold hearted. She's a fierce protector. She doesn't, emotionless a lot of times. And her pep talk was probably the best out of all of the pep talks I got. You and I always have a long-winded conversation. My dad's stoic. Have fun. You know what I mean? Call me later. Andine, when we were walking to the start line at 4:30 in the morning, she goes, "You got this, babe." Gave me a kiss, and that was it. You know what I mean?
That's
just
great.
A quick one hit and a little motivation. And she always is there to leave some humor. When she asked me how I'm feeling, she goes, "Oh, try having kids." I'm like, "All right, fuck you in." Okay, you in. You win. Try having kids. I get it. But yeah, it was cool. Great. It was cool. She was great.
What was the longest time you spent at an aid station? You said the first one you just filled up with water. One of them you got your quads massaged. How long would you typically stop there?
So I tried to be 2 minutes or so, roughly 2 minutes on each one. 2 to 3 minutes. That was definitely the first aid station. I don't even think it was 2 minutes because Andine wasn't there. The second aid station was probably 3 minutes because I changed my shirt and stuff. Andine sprayed my bald head with some sunscreen, the back of my neck. 26, I probably spent a little bit more time at because Andine brought me the sandwich. And we knew we had 11 miles coming up with no aid. So that was one where I probably spent 5 minutes and then hit the trail. And then 37, because my blister had just popped. When I got to that aid station, it was the hottest part of the day, and there was a bucket full of ice and water and sponges, big sponges. And the aid station workers like, you want a little cold? You know, one guy took my Camelback to fill it up in my electrolytes, and I was just standing there. She's like, "You want some ice sponged on your back?" And I'm like, yep. So she sponged me off the back of my neck a few times and just instantly brought the body temperature down. And then at that aid station, I had half of that peanut butter and honey sandwich that Andine made me. And then I had Nutella and a Nutella rolled up, like a little tortilla roll up with Nutella on it. And I think I had maybe half a cookie or something there, but I had a can of Coke there too. That was the first can of Coke I had. And I left that aid station feeling like $1 million, even though my toe was just miserable. I felt like $1 million fucking dollars from aid station 37 to 42. 42 was just a water stop. It was water only. And then, so I was probably 5-6 minutes there. 42 was a minute just to take my Camelback up and top my water off because it was water only. And then 45 was probably 3-4 minutes. I bet you in total, 5, 10, 15, probably 20 to 25 minutes total spent at aid stations. Which isn't bad, you know. And I honestly, I don't know if I would have wanted to clean it up and going any faster than that, because then at that point you miss something, right? You miss, you don't top your water off all the way, or you forget the stretch or whatever. So I think those were the right time frames.
Yeah. Last week we talked about the importance of having a band of brothers. You talked about having somebody on the race with you during the race that you ran with. You talked about Andine. She's not a brother, but it goes into that same thing, having a crew of people that you can count on.
Yeah.
I know the day before when you were driving up there, you had some issues that day where you needed some talk off a ledge. Can you just kind of talk about like the importance of having people around you throughout that process to help you focus and help you get through that?
Yeah, for sure. Having people in your corner is important. And that's one thing I love about ultra running is it is a ginormous community. Now, I couldn't have been any further than in terms of similarities and differences than most of the people that ran that race. I'm not a hippie. Nothing against hippies. Hippies are cool. I like to shower. I don't have a ponytail or a Jesus beard. You know what I mean? I don't sleep in a van. I sleep in a house.
But you do like to ground yourself. So,
but I do like the ground. Like I said, hippies are cool. It's not but everybody in that race, in most every ultra, everybody, it's because it's not a 5K, right? It's not a marathon where you're going to run as fast as you can on some asphalt and you just blow by everybody. Dude, because it's a long day, man. It's whether you did the 50 or the 100, it's a long day for people. And people are there to pick each other up. Like, you will have more conversation with random people at an ultra event, and there's a good conversation because everybody's out there suffering, right? Everyone's out there in the pain cave together. So the importance of that is, man, I don't know if I'd want to do that by myself. You freaking become a prisoner of your own mind. If you don't got no one to talk to or nothing to look forward to, if you're just out there doing that shit by yourself, that'd be really, really hard. Now there's people that are just cut from a different cloth and they're great 100-mile runners or 50s, and that gun goes off and they're gone. And that's it. They don't run with anybody. They just go and get it done because their objective is to win. But for 95% of the people there, their objective is to finish well and have a great time. And the ultra running community is very, 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 very well known for that. It's like, it is a band of, not a band of brothers, but it's a band of runners where everybody helps everybody. And you could see that at the aid stations. You could see that on the course. Like I mentioned, Nathan that I met, I picked him up around mile 4 and we literally ran on and off side by side or single file for 46 miles together. You learn a lot about a human in 46 miles. it's tremendous. It's tremendous. But the importance of having a crew and having people with you is second to none for sure.
So you have done a lot of different races. You've done the 5Ks, the 10Ks, half, full marathon. You did a 30K, and you bumped this up to a 50 miler.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what would you say for people? We talk about mental toughness, discipline. People that maybe are just starting out, maybe they're not ready to do an ultra marathon yet, but what would you say to somebody who wants to make that progress? Maybe they've already ran a 5K and then maybe they're thinking about a 10K or a half marathon. How does somebody get started and be able to kind of push through that stuff? Because your level of suck is different than somebody else who's just starting out.
Yeah, it's really hard because the discipline, even though it's running, it's the disciplines are so entirely different. If you want to become a good road runner, like you have to just focus on quicker, shorter stuff, building up endurance and stamina that way. I think ultra running is easier to break into if it's something you look forward to because you're good. It's more time on your feet than it is charts. Like a lot of road running, whereas marathons, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, you're always looking at data, how fast you are, what was your heart rate, this, that, and everything. Where the ultra, a lot of times you run on feel, right? So for those that want to begin, first of all, you just got to go outside and get moving. Number one, if you can't run, walk, and then, mix it up. But if you want to just excel, it comes down to you yourself and your commitment to wanting to do it, right? You have to want it. You have to want it. Like, cause you could say, anyone can just say, hey, I want to run a marathon. Like, yeah, but do you really want to? Because no one wants to just run 26 miles to run 26 miles. It's really just about, but I think it ties into the Band of Brothers, man. Find someone else that likes to do it or someone you can learn from. And it makes it so much more fun because it's at its very core, man. We're social beings, getting out there and learning from someone that's done it, is huge. And also, like I said, I started on the road running, done Ironman, done marathons, done half marathons, done 5Ks. And it wasn't until I transitioned to trails that I really was like, okay, road running, I had my fun. Now this is more like mental, like how tough am I really to get out here and do this shit? You know what I'm saying?
So what's next for you?
I think I'll do the 50K that I did my first ultra ever that I was just absolutely atrocious at back right pre-COVID because I was not as in good a shape and I was not, pre-75 hard, which I'm a completely different animal than I was then. Then I loved to run, but I also loved to eat and socially drink and do dumb shit and think I was in shape, but I really wasn't. You know what I mean? So I would love redemption at the Rumble in January because the Oracle Rumble 50K was my first ultra distance and I was awful at it. I'd love redemption there. Just go there for the 50K, not the 50 miler. Redeem myself on the 50K and really put out a time that I know I'm capable of, and I should have been capable of back then if I had taken it seriously. That's next, and then after that, I don't know, 100K maybe. 100K would be 62 miles, which would up me from 50 to 62. Eventually working my way up to 100. That guy that I met at the race, Nathan, he's doing Cocodona next year, which is a 250-mile race. He's going to need a pacer. So I told him, hey, if you want a pacer in May, I would gladly come out and run 50 or 60 or 70 miles if you need a pacer for some of it, which I would,
That's great.
Which would be cool. But I think if I work my way up in the scenario that would make the most sense, if I did a 50K in January, like as a tune-up to 100K somewhere in February or March when the weather's still really good, then do 50 to 70 miles of pacing at Cocodona, maybe ease off beginning of summer, ramp up a plan to find a 100-miler at the end of summer, or who knows, maybe go back to Prescott and do the 100-mile of the saddles, instead of doing the 50, do the 100, right. You know what I mean? And make that my, 50 this year, 100 next year. And then in the middle, throw in a bunch of just, a 50-miler or 60, 100K or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how the rest of this year pans out.
Well, that sounds great, man. I appreciate you sharing some of your insights. Anything else you wanted to add to it, or?
No, really, not really. I mean, there's so much. There was so much that happens in 11 hours and 53 minutes out there. You know what I mean? The highs and lows, and you could talk
Yeah.
about trail conditions. You could talk about anything, but overall, it just was fucking awesome, man. Like, actually, something I do want to bring up, and I realize this is normal after talking to other ultra runners. Like, you literally have a major letdown after you cross the finish line because you mentally, because like I put in all that work right to get there, and then it's over. 11 hours of your life is fast in the grand scheme of things. And then it was just over.
Yeah.
It was just over. And for about 24 hours afterwards, I was like, man, this sucks. It's over. Like what, all that work.
Yeah.
And now what? You know what I mean? But like for
Yeah.
3 days or so, I just was still stoked on that runner's high. But then there was also that point where it was like, oh man, this sucks, man. I don't want it to end. And it did,
Yeah.
so, but yeah. So just keep moving forward and see what comes up next. But enough about me. Let's talk about you, because not only did we both, I told you this on the phone, we both ended September with a bang. Mine was with a 50 miler, and yours was with what?
Football. Lots and lots of football.
Yeah.
Casey and the kids came for the first time to see a show that I was doing and experience college football. The only college football game they had ever been to was University of Arizona game, so they haven't been to really any college football to really speak of. So they came to Texas when this comes out, they came up to Texas for the Kansas game, which was awesome. It was a 2:30 kick. Kids got to experience all of it. The day before, Friday, got to take them out onto the field. We threw the football around for a little bit, took some pictures. Both kids just absolutely loved running around the Texas field, DKR, and just pretending to be a star football player. Saturday, they got to see the parades, the players arriving, Bevo. I got them field passes. They were able to go down onto the field, be down there for player warm-ups, give high fives to the team, and get some pictures with Bevo and some of that cool stuff. They were able to come into the truck, watch some of the show with me. They were able to watch the show from the set up on the corner of the end zone with all the guys that do the show. They got to meet, ex-NFL players that work on the show. So they got to have an absolute blast. Bryce said, "There's no doubt about it. He's going to play football at Texas." That's what he told me the other day, which I thought was phenomenal. Kendall had more fun than I probably could have imagined that she would have had. They just really soaked it up, man. It was so much fun. And we didn't stop it there. Sunday, we got in the car. We drove up to Dallas to see the Cowboys beat the shit out of the Patriots, which was awesome. I didn't have a great track record going to Cowboy games, and they shocked me. And it was amazing, man. We had some incredible seats at the game that I got from a friend. And, man, it was amazing. We ran into Carp up there. He was celebrating a friend's birthday, so we caught up in Dallas outside the game for a little bit. It was good to see him. So all in all, man, it was a heck of a weekend. We had a lot of fun. It was actually one of the more fun weekends I've ever had. Just kind of cut loose, had fun. The kids they were at the ages where they could enjoy it. They pushed through hard. It was a long weekend, late nights. And I'll be honest, man, some of the experiences that they got to have, it was like a once in a lifetime sort of thing. So it was pretty awesome.
That's awesome to hear. And I think we should save a spot a little bit on next week's episode to talk a little bit more of because I'm really more interested to hear about the on field stuff and all that other good jazz.
Yeah.
And so next week, when this is released, it will be fall break. One last thing before we go, we're heading to Virginia. What about you? Anything? Any plans? We're gonna see. Well, spoiler, we will see each other.
Spoiler alert. I'm going to be driving back from Austin, Texas with you.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to work, and then I'm going to prepare for a feast of feasts for when you guys arrive back on Saturday night after fall break. So I can at least give your girls some Traeger meals that they've been missing out on for the last couple of years. So that's what I got planned.
Absolutely. Well, there is no book recommendation today. Today was primarily just for the race recap episode. Talk a little bit about Texas. anything you want to close us out with, or just take us home, and we'll talk to you next week, episode 83?
Yeah, everybody, get out there, continue to live the full force life. Discipline. That is, I think, one of the main things of today. Discipline, mental toughness. Go back, listen to this. Hear some of those great insights from Brett and the race and what that was like and that experience. And we'll see you next week.